All right, everyone, welcome to our deep dive on improving English fluency.
Yeah, we're going to unlock some seriously cool strategies from a popular language learning podcast. I think it's called How to Improve English Fluency, 15 Tips.
And, we're all about the practical advice here, so this is going to be great because, getting fluent is more than just textbook grammar. It's about that natural flow, the confidence you're after.
One of the most fascinating things to me is how much we can learn from the way children acquire language.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't even know what grammar is, but they just become fluent through constant exposure.
That's so true. But as adults, how do we recreate that language bath that they just get so effortless in? I think the podcast had some really interesting ideas about immersion. Like even just switching your phone and computer settings to English. That's a great start.
Absolutely. But it's about going beyond just the interface. Think about what you enjoy. Movies, TV shows, even social media. Consuming that in English, maybe start with subtitles. Yeah.
But it turns leisure time into learning time.
Okay, I'm already hooked. It's like sneaking veggies into a smoothie. You're getting the goodness without even realizing it. But they also mentioned talking to yourself in English. I don't know, isn't that a bit lonely sounding?
I can see why you might think that. But it's more about creating that constant internal chatter in English.
Yeah.
Narrate your day, describe what you see. You could even argue with yourself in English. It's all about building up that mental muscle.
I like that. All right, I'm willing to try. The podcast also really stressed vocabulary, but they went beyond just, learn new words. It was about using them right away. Right?
Exactly. They had this great example with the word exhilarating. Instead of just memorizing it, they suggest crafting a sentence like, that last hike was exhilarating. So it's about making it active knowledge, not just a dictionary definition.
Yeah, I like that. It's reminding me of that saying, use it or lose it, but for language, which...
Speaking of using it, daily practice is obviously key. And they were big on finding a speaking partner.
Yeah, for sure. And for those who don't have somebody, readily available, language exchange apps, things like Tandem or Hello Talk can be really, really helpful. Even just 10 minutes a day makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm sensing a theme here. Consistency is king. Now, pronunciation, I think for a lot of people, can be a big hurdle. It makes them feel self-conscious. And the podcast really tackled that head on.
They did. They reframed it so brilliantly, saying pronunciation is a learnable skill, not a fixed talent.
Right.
And so one tip they gave was recording yourself and comparing it to native speakers. Tools like Youglish or Forvo are great for this. You start noticing those subtle rhythms and intonation patterns that native speakers use.
It's like you become your own pronunciation detective.
Yeah.
I like that. But they also emphasize active listening, which sounds a lot more intense than just passively hearing English.
There's a huge difference. Active listening is about focusing on the music of English, not just the words. How do native speakers use tone, pauses, where they emphasize certain words? Podcasts and audiobooks are perfect for this kind of practice.
You know what? This is making me think about how much I enjoy listening to music in English. Would singing along actually be a form of practice, or am I just karaoke obsessed?
That's a brilliant connection. Singing along to English songs is a form of practice, particularly for intonation and rhythm. It also helps with pronunciation and, expanding your vocabulary. So you're getting so much out of something you enjoy doing.
See, this is why I love these deep dives. It's these unexpected connections. We can't forget the classics, though, right? Reading and writing.
Right.
Some people might think those are kind of old school, but the podcast argued that they're essential for fluency.
Yeah, they had the suggestion of reading aloud daily, starting with, simpler material and gradually leveling up. It's like training your tongue and your brain to work together, smoothly in English. And then keeping a journal solidifies grammar and vocabulary while documenting your progress.
Yeah, it's like that show your work in math class.
Right.
So you're proving to yourself you've got this. But what about the fear factor? A lot of people, they get paralyzed by making mistakes.
Yeah.
How does the podcast address that?
They tackled it head on. They said, look, everyone makes mistakes, even native speakers.
Right.
Making mistakes is actually a sign that you're pushing yourself.
Yeah.
So they encourage reframing mistakes as learning opportunities, like analyze what went wrong and try again.
So by getting comfortable with being a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They also brought up this thing called shadowing. I don't know, that sounds kind of mysterious.
It's actually quite simple. You listen to a native speaker and try to mimic their tone and rhythm as closely as possible, like a vocal shadow. It can be challenging at first, but it gets easier with practice, and the payoff is huge for natural-sounding fluency.
So it's like becoming a pronunciation chameleon.
Exactly.
I love that. It's fascinating how all these seemingly separate things, reading, talking to yourself, even karaoke, can contribute to fluency.
It really is. It's about building a multifaceted approach that works for you. And speaking of building, the podcast emphasized that consistency is key. Fluency isn't built overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Even dedicating just 15 minutes a day can make a huge difference.
It's like those small, consistent steps, like learning a new dance move, right?
Exactly.
Okay, so we've laid some great groundwork here. We talked about immersion, vocabulary practice, even conquering those mental hurdles.
Yeah.
But there's more to uncover. Are you ready to keep digging?
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see what other gems we can unearth in this fluency goldmine.
Let's do it. We'll be back with even more insights in just a moment.
One thing that can really trip people up, on their fluency journey is idioms.
Oh, idioms. They're like the secret handshake of a language, aren't they? Even for native speakers, they can be tricky.
It's fascinating, though, how they offer this glimpse into the culture and mindset of native speakers. It's not just understanding the words themselves, it's grasping the underlying meaning.
Right, like saying it's raining cats and dogs instead of just it's raining heavily. It paints such a vivid picture, even if it is a little nonsensical.
Exactly. And while they can be challenging for learners, the podcast, really encourages embracing them as a way to add color and personality to your language.
So do you need to learn every single idiom out there? I mean, that seems a little daunting.
Not at all. Start with a few that you find interesting or useful. Maybe ones related to your hobbies or interests.
So if you're a foodie, you might learn idioms like spill the beans or have your cake and eat it too.
Precisely. Make it relevant to your life and the things that you love to talk about. It'll make the learning process more engaging, and the idioms will stick better.
Now, another kind of advanced strategy that the podcast highlighted, and one that honestly makes me a little nervous, is thinking in English.
I can understand why that might feel intimidating. It's like stepping into a whole new mental landscape. But remember, fluency really blossoms when you can think in the language without translating in your head.
So how does one even begin to rewire their brain like that? Any tips for making the transition smoother?
Well, one approach is to start with just, simple everyday thoughts. Instead of thinking I'm tired and then translating it, just try thinking I'm tired directly in English.
It's like those mental exercises where you try to avoid thinking about a pink elephant. And then suddenly all you can see is a pink elephant. But with English, you want it to be the opposite, right? You want to just naturally think in the language.
Exactly. And as you get more comfortable, you can, gradually challenge yourself with more complex thoughts and internal monologues. It's a process, but with consistent effort, it becomes more and more natural.
So start small, be patient, and eventually you'll be dreaming in English. Now, the final kind of piece of advice that the podcast offered, and this one really resonates with me, is to stay curious and find what sparks your passion. They encourage you to explore your interests through the lens of English.
I think that's where the magic really happens. Whether it's history, science, music, or anything else, there's a whole universe of English language content out there just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it's like having a VIP pass to a global library filled with books, podcasts, documentaries, all in English.
And the beauty of it is you're not just learning about the subject matter, you're immersing yourself in the language and culture in a way that's deeply engaging and memorable.
It's like learning about the history of pizza while simultaneously perfecting your pronunciation of mozzarella. Talk about a win-win.
Exactly. So as we kind of approach the final stretch of our fluency deep dive, what are some key takeaways that you'll be carrying with you?
I think for me, the biggest one is the importance of finding joy in the learning process. It's easy to get caught up in the technicalities, but when you focus on the things you genuinely enjoy, learning English becomes less about, work and more about exploring a passion.
I love that perspective. It's so important to remember that language is ultimately a tool for connection and expression, not just a set of rules to be mastered.
And I also really appreciate the reminder that fluency is an ongoing journey. It's not about achieving perfection overnight. It's about celebrating each small victory along the way and never losing sight of the joy of learning. Absolutely. It's about embracing the process, the challenges, the mistakes, and the aha moments that make the journey so rewarding. Now, as we transition to the final part of our deep dive, I want to leave you with a thought-provoking question to consider. How can you apply these tips to achieve a specific English learning goal that you have? Whether it's, acing an upcoming presentation, having a more fluent conversation with a friend, or finally understanding that British TV show you love, how can you tailor these strategies to your unique needs?
That is such a powerful question. It's easy to get caught up in the general idea of fluency, but having a specific goal in mind makes it so much more tangible and motivating.
Yeah, like having a destination on a map, right? Gives you a sense of direction and purpose for your journey.
And speaking of journeys, it's been incredible exploring all these different facets of fluency with you. We've covered so much, from the power of immersion to the nuances of pronunciation to the importance of finding joy in the learning process. Yeah, it's been a true deep dive, uncovering all those hidden gems of wisdom that can help anyone unlock their fluency potential.
Now, one thing that has really resonated with me throughout this whole exploration is that we don't have to do this alone. There's a whole community of English learners out there, all facing similar challenges and celebrating those victories, those similar victories.
Absolutely. Connecting with other learners can be incredibly empowering. You can share tips, you can practice together, you can motivate each other to keep pushing forward.
It's like having a team of adventurers by your side, all on a quest to conquer that mountain of fluency.
And remember, every step you take, every word you learn, every conversation you have, it brings you closer to the summit.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm feeling incredibly inspired and equipped to continue on my own English learning adventure, and I hope you are too.
Absolutely. Remember, fluency is a journey, not a destination. Embrace the process, stay curious, and never stop exploring the richness and beauty of the English language.
Beautifully said. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this incredible deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel empowered to unlock your full potential in English.
Keep practicing, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep having fun with it.
Until next time, happy learning.